I do want to discuss that. Actually, that's good.
I just want to put on the record that the National Academy of Science has stated, and I've got the printout of its report here, its personal opinion, rightly or wrongly, I'm not saying they're right, but as a point of fact, their opinion is that they consider evolution to effectively be a fact, okay? Now they may be wrong, but hopefully we can agree that if I'm providing factual evidence, that is their position, and their credentials are that they are...
I know who they are.
Okay, just so your viewers know who they are, they've got 2,493 members, last check, including 190 Nobel Prize winners, yeah? They're hired by the American government, who you might not like, fine, on a budget of $500 million a year to give objective advice to the American government, yeah? So these are some of the elite scientists who my friends here will quite often quote when it comes to talking about the Big Bang and theories in physics, which they're happy to embrace. And their considered opinion is that evolution is very highly likely. Now, they may be wrong. I put it to you, my most hopeful view on this is that evolution is that God designed us through evolution, and that there's no necessary conflict between the facts of this and your view of religion. I'm hopeful of that.
Would you say it's very clear from what they're saying here that they are not speaking about Darwinian evolution, but evolution apart from Darwin, as in a broader concept of evolution?
Well, they say, to quote from there,
they say evolution is a fact.
The theory of evolution explains. I don't think we're going to get to read the whole thing now, but I will if you want.
No, okay, but I know. Sorry, one second.
Already.
Okay.
The subject.
Yeah, but I don't want to read the whole thing. Yeah.
Just one question. Who funded these researchers?
Oh, they're funded by the American government.
Objective, as we clearly know, the one who sponsors a particular area of research has an agenda.
For sure.
So we need to make sure that they are neutral. But you can carry on.
Okay, but
I tried to make it clear that I'm hired by the American government to advise the American government on a number of different issues.
It's good to address, by the way, this.
But look, I think it's worth you reading at least the first 2-3 lines.
I have read it.
Okay, no.
I'm read it for about 6 months or so.
Okay, but I actually don't disagree with this.
Okay, this is progress.
Okay,
you don't disagree with
what I want to make clear, and I think this is very important, even before this, before you came, we were speaking about how Darwin, well, if not the most famous, his entire book, The God Delusion, the central argument is to use Darwinism to undermine design.
Sure.
You see, so what I do is I make a distinction between evolution and Darwinian evolution. Now, these guys, they had a court case, you know about the Dawah case?
No, sure.
Okay, they had a Dawah case about intelligent design, the National Academy of Science, and you had Michael Roos as one of the witnesses, and you also had William Dembski, Kenneth Miller, all these guys, they all came, right? Long story short, this is because near the end of it they say about should creationism be given equal time, right? Intelligent design was ruled to be pseudoscience at that time, during the Dawah case. Do you know why it was ruled to be pseudoscience, and why they call it pseudoscience?
Go ahead.
They actually ruled it by definition. They said science only deals with the natural, the observable, therefore, and is based on methodological naturalism. Therefore, intelligent design is pseudoscience.
Okay, I wouldn't agree with that.
Okay, good. You don't agree with that. But just to point out,
I don't agree with intelligent design. I do agree with evolution, but I don't think the argument you just put forward is a cogent argument.
No. It's their argument.
Yeah, I think their argument isn't cogent on that point, and I'd agree with you.
Good. And the reason why that argument's not valid is because there is no clear-cut distinction between science and pseudoscience. There's a huge demarcation problem, and there's grey areas. Now, some things are clearly not science. For example, astrology. We know that that's not science. Some things clearly are science, but it's a grey area, like evolutionary psychology. There's certain things there. There's certain things like Freudian theories. Are they science or not? However, the way intelligent design was pushed out by the National Academy of Sciences.
I'm not defending them for doing that.
No, but I want to point that out, because when you handed this to me, I looked at the thing right near the end where it said, why can't we teach creation science in my school? Now, this is the thing I want to point out, right?
Okay. Can I preface this?
Sure.
You are slightly shifting the goalposts, I think. So I know that some of the materialists, some of these scientists, the hardline atheists, I think they're disingenuous in their arguments against religion, and I can agree with you on that. We don't need to spend too much time. They're a disingenuous representation for materialist scientists with regard to arguments about God, and I think Dawkins is somewhat blinded, okay? And in his recent debate with Jordan Peterson, I think you can see where that clear division is.
Or even Dennis Noble.
Yeah, okay. I think Peterson is cutting to the heart of the spirit of religion, and I know you'll have differences of opinion with him. You'll agree that he's cutting to a metaphysical dimension that Dawkins seems to be immune to.
Yeah. I wouldn't say immune to. I would say his epistemology doesn't recognize it.
Yeah, okay.
Because he's fundamentally a follower of scientism. Yeah. He says God is a scientific hypothesis.
Yeah.
So when you have that kind of blinkers on, you're not going to see what Peterson's saying or other thinkers are saying. And to be honest, this is not everything Peterson was saying is things that Keith Ward would have said to Dawkins years ago.
Okay.
I mean, these are things which are really well known, but the reason why I pointed this out is because the National Academy of Sciences, what they did in their argument against intelligent design was unethical.
Okay, maybe it was. Maybe it was.
And I'm trying to explain to you why it was unethical.
Okay.
Now, I know you disagree with intelligent design, but on the minimum...
I think intelligent design, if you dig deeper, may be compatible with Darwinian evolution if you allow a linking kind of thought process, yeah? If you make it black or white, it has to be one or the other. But if you can see a level of symbolism maybe in this, then maybe it's compatible.
So I wouldn't
and a lot of religions have embraced that.
So I wouldn't even say symbolic or metaphoric. I would say even if you accept the evolutionary story by natural selection and design, they are compatible. There's somebody I'm interviewing tomorrow, and I've interviewed him in the past. His name is Erkki Kajonin. He's written a book called Evolution and Design, right? And what he does is he shows is you can have a total naturalistic story, yet it doesn't undermine the design argument. Which, by the way, that's...
You profess he says that. I can't accept it just because you say it.
No. What I'm saying is people can make the argument that design is compatible with evolutionary theory. I don't deny that.
So I think that's the way forward.
Yeah,
so
but
I like Adamic exceptionalism. I think Adamic exceptionalism is an excellent bridging mechanism. Yeah. And you've had Professor Malik, and I've seen you guys have chatted with him. That's heading in the right direction.
No, see, that's a particular element. I want to look at the broader picture first, because I think what's happened is this: for many years, Darwin's views were misrepresented. Because Darwin's views were you can be an ardent evolutionist and you can believe in God.
Yeah, and he was brought up in a time when belief in God was the default. He was a Christian himself, and he had to grapple with his faith in the face of his understanding of evolution. Yeah,
it wasn't exactly like that. So
just roughly and broadly, what I'm saying has some.
So you see, the motivation wasn't due to his own religious belief. It wasn't, because he was a deist. He didn't believe God intervened when he published the Origin of Species. Right, you're a deist, right? So you know, deism states God doesn't intervene. It's not theism.
Yeah.
So for Darwin, what he had in his mind was that you can have a naturalistic process which unfolds, right? And that process is something which can dovetail with the belief in God. Now, he actually went further because he had a friend called Asa Gray, who's an American biologist who believed in God. So Asa Gray actually was pointed out as an example by Darwin of somebody that can be an ardent evolutionist and a theist. Now, what did the neo-Darwinists do? The neo-Darwinists used evolutionary theory, one, to show it to be true in a way that is not in line with the evidence. That's the first thing they did. Secondly, they metaphysically abused it. They used it to push atheism, right? And this is something that they've been doing for decades, and the God delusion I pointed out is one example, but there's many other examples where they did this, and we can't ignore that.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
You know much more about the facts of the history of this debate. Okay? What I'm trying to do is distill them down to an evaluation for a layman's point of view. I'm a layman.
Fine.
Okay? Now, I disagree with your conclusion, even though I know you know more facts, because knowing facts and being able to evaluate facts are not the same thing. Okay. What we're
evaluating here is a process. I'm not responsible for all the abuse of the system by other people in the past. As a layman, what I see is I'm explained a process called evolution, which seems fairly simple. A being, a life form will tend to reproduce a copy of itself, except occasionally there will be a mutation. If there's a mutation, it will have a new adaptation, a new characteristic, which may fit with the environment or not. If it's advantageous in the environment, it's more likely then to be passed on to the next generation, then that becomes the new default. It's a very, very simple mechanism. And you agree that it works with regard to other species, yes?
I don't actually.
In the lab with fruit flies and all of this stuff?
So I'm going to explain to you something which is very important. As a supplementary process, as a, if you like, tertiary even process, we do observe basic things, which is that if you have a particular mutation which can facilitate an adaptive feature, then you're more likely to survive than not. That's clear.
That's clear?
There's no denying that.
Okay, so far so good. So where do we differ?
So the difference is to use that to say that explains the biosphere. That's simplistic.
Yeah, it's a more ambitious claim.
Okay, not more ambitious. I would say it's an almost it's almost like using the smallest element you have and to go to the massive unknown without looking at the complexity of the world. So it's completely unjustified.
Maybe that.
But let me explain to you why I believe that's the case. In 2016, this is where I use examples of others who've said the same thing. In 2016 at the Royal Society in London, the same place where Darwin in 1858 presented
again, you have so many more facts.
No, but I'm explaining to you what happened. You had two groups of scientists, one led by Dennis Noble, right, who is a non-neo-Darwinist, evolutionist, and you had Darwinists. And they were arguing about this basic point. Is the simplistic notion of natural selection plus random mutation sufficient to explain all of life? And some eminent scientists believe the answer is no. Other scientists believe the answer is yes.
Is it abiogenesis, yeah? I mean, the transmission, the transmutation, is it abiogenesis?
No.
The jump from the material structure to the organic life structure.
No, they didn't debate that.
They didn't debate that.
See, Darwinism begins after life.
Okay, I mean the Miliary experiment, yeah? The mystery seems to be in that terrain.
So they weren't talking about that. They were talking about the mechanism, right? So Dennis Noble, James Shapiro, Carl Woese, and these are big figures. I'll give you an example. We have archaea, we have bacteria, we have eukarya. We have the domains of life, 3 domains of life. Any biology textbook, you're going to see these 3 domains of life. Carl Woese discovered archaea. So he is, if you like, one of the most important scientists of the last 100 years. He did not believe in natural selection plus random mutation is sufficient to explain all of life. So James Shapiro wrote a book called Evolution, A View from the 21st Century, and he's somebody who is a naturalist, but he doesn't believe in neo-Darwinism, right? Carl Woese said about his book that this is a game changer. So here we're talking about heavyweights.
I'm not going to dispute any of your facts, but I want to contextualize this.
No, but I want to contextualize it from the sense that not all scientists believe natural selection plus random mutation is sufficient for life.
I never said they did. What I'm saying is it would seem to me a point of fact. You've mentioned 3 or 4 quote heavyweights, yeah? And you think they represent significant evidence in your favour. I'm just going, it looks like there's 190 Nobel Prize winners who are also heavyweights, who if they were here now and I asked, do you believe in Darwinian evolution, would say yes, and the reason I think that is they published to that effect. Now, as a layman, which is what I am, and what most of your viewers are, when I'm trying to work out where does the truth lie, if I was trying to be objective and honest with myself, I think I would be unwise to conclude that the 4 heavyweights that you listed completely obliterate any consideration I should give to 190. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm just trying to, methodologically, I think there should be an element of doubt in my mind, if I'm being honest with myself.
So,
yes?
Is
that doubt a reasonable conclusion for an objective person?
I'll actually amplify what you're saying. I won't disagree. I would go as far as saying what Dennis Noble said, which is that 90%, above 90% of scientists do not believe, do believe neo-Darwinism is sufficient. Now, I actually...
Thank you.
Well, no, that's
it's good that people know that.
No, of course.
Okay.
One of the arguments that was made during the discussion between Richard Dawkins and Dennis Noble, and Dawkins made this point in his new book, which was just released, The Genetic Book of the Dead as well, which is, if Dennis Noble is right, then all of the scientists that have been working for decades and publishing papers in genetics, in zoology, in biochemistry, all this stuff, they've all had the wrong assumption, they've all had the wrong framework. So I agree with you.
May be correct, but as a layman, that's another assertion which is being made by another expert in the field, in the face of hundreds of experts in the field who would disagree with that assertion. So as a layman, I've still got to conclude it's undecided at best.
Let me explain something. I'm not actually disagreeing with what you said. I'm actually amplifying it. I'm saying, you pointed out 2,000 something scientists. I'm saying the vast majority of scientists believe in neo-Darwinism.
Right.
I actually don't disagree with that.
So in the face of that, why are you 100% confident? Can we get religious for a minute? I'm hoping it's something more than just going, because I've accepted that the Quran is the literal truth, that's my predicate, and anything which contradicts it must be wrong. I'm hoping that's not the crux of your argument. I'm hoping that you can accept, you're 100% rejecting neo-Darwinism for another reason apart.
Okay, so but let me just explain something. Dennis Noble believes in human chimp ancestry. He believes in all species came from one origin. So when I'm talking about the third way of evolution, Carl Woese, James Shapiro, Scott Turner, or any of these guys, they all still believe all of life came from one cell, essentially, right? They don't deny universal common ancestry. So this discussion is about the mechanism of evolution. It's not actually about universal common ancestry. However, the question that you've asked is a good one. Why am I 100% certain? And I would say this, Tony. I'm not 100% certain. I'm not.
That doesn't mean that you're wrong.
Sure. But I am 100% certain about one thing. I'm not 100% certain the third way of evolution is correct. I am certain 100% that there is significant challenges to neo-Darwinism which have not been addressed, and therefore the jury's out. I believe the jury's out. So, for example, Dennis Noble said neo-Darwinism is dead. I don't believe neo-Darwinism is dead. I believe the evidence for neo-Darwinism is dead, but I believe it's alive in all of the biological circles. I believe sociologically the theory is far too strong to be upended by Dennis Noble in the third way of evolution. Right. So,
but do you think it's also reasonable for a layman? For a layman. Cheers. I was going to. I'll tell you in a minute. We're chatting right now. It's reasonable for a layman to say the jury is out.
I believe that too.
Therefore, it's reasonable for a layman to have doubt as to which of the two beliefs they have. So it's reasonable for the layman to have doubt that evolution is the intelligent design is the truth.
So
we know we're heading towards check.
So let me just point out one small thing, which is,
I'm not trying to smash the religion. I'm just trying to, stress test.
Yeah, no worries. Let's stand here. So just to end the point, because we're going to have to move. The third way of evolution has nothing to do. Sorry, we're just filming here. Give us 1 second. The third way of evolution has nothing to do with intelligent design. Neo-Darwinism has nothing to do with intelligent design. Proponents of third way of evolution and intelligent design are both critics. Proponents of neo-Darwinism and the third way of evolution, Dennis Noble, James Shapiro, they're all critics of intelligent design. So this debate...
but I think we're not micromanaging different strands. It's like arguing about different strands of democracy. Yeah, you can have first past the post. You can micromanage the argument about the strengths and weaknesses, but the basic principle stands, and the basic principle of evolution, neo-Darwin or otherwise, is one of non-intelligent design through random mutation and then adaptivity to the environment.
So see, this is where I disagree.
But would these 190 scientists disagree?
No. Okay. So no, I think we've convoluted 2-3 different issues here. Let me just explain something. This is something I cover in my new book, which is going to be published by the end of the year, right, by Sapiens Institute. Neo-Darwinism and the third way of evolution both do not undermine the idea of design. They both do not. That is not a scientific position, it's a philosophical position based upon where you start off from. It's got nothing to do with the science itself.
I understand, this is your assertion, and now I'm saying, if I ask these 190 scientists if it does or not, they would disagree with you, yes?
I don't...
Doesn't mean they're right, but as a point of fact, it's very likely they would disagree with you.
So this is where it gets a bit confusing. Francis Collins is part of the National Academy.
There's 190 people here.
Yeah, but I'm giving you an example of one that I know.
If I ring the NAS and I ask them, do you agree with Subboor's assertion? I assume they would say no.
What's my assertion?
Your assertion that creationism is compatible with Darwinism.
No, it wasn't creationism. I didn't say creationism.
Intelligent design. No, intelligent design is compatible.
So let me say the statement, and you can ring them and check it.
Please. Hey, I'll write it down.
Yeah, sure. Or you can listen to the recording.
Okay, good.
The belief in design, the belief in God, the belief in intelligent design is not a position which is undermined by neo-Darwinism or the third way of evolution. That's an independent philosophical position that has its own arguments, so people may believe it or not believe it. Science itself is silent when it comes to these metaphysical issues, which is the position that you would have if you take the philosophy seriously. Wow.
This isn't working. I had a bigger problem with this.
In fact, they say it too. There's a section there where it says evolution doesn't undermine God in the same paper you gave me.
I think you're trying to reframe it as a metaphysical question.
It is, though. It is.
Well, if you ask, is God involved, it becomes a metaphysical question. But you can ask the question of evolution purely within the framework of biology, which is what the Nobel Prize-winning scientists are attempting to do. Yeah, and within that framework, it's a very cogent interpretation. I think they may be wrong, but you're asserting that they're definitely wrong, or you're asserting they might be right, or are you asserting there's no contradiction?
No. So let me just make it clear. They believe intelligent design is pseudoscience based upon bad argumentation. I already spoke to you about that earlier. But no scientist in the world can use evolution to say that design is an illusion unless they're using a metaphysical framework.
You can't prove there's no design
using science.
You can't prove there's no design using science, but you can argue as to the mechanism by which design was achieved. And it's possible that design was achieved via the evolutionary mechanism which they proposed. It's also possible it was achieved via Adamic exceptionalism, which has also been suggested. So these are three possible mechanisms. Number one, God magically goes, let it happen, and it happens. Number two, you get God going, I'll put a process in play which is that of Darwinian evolution, and I'll let it do the job for me. Or number three, Adamic exceptionalism, which again God puts in play. These are three viable mechanisms, and the point of conflict here is between which of them is the most viable, yeah?
Okay, so let me, just to summarize, none of this is a scientific discussion.
I don't agree. Some of this is. Sure.
Okay, so the premises may involve a scientific fact or a scientific theory, but the arguments are being made within theories of metaphysics. So
I'm not trying to do that though.
No.
In that there's you and me talking now, and I can't be responsible for what all these other people think. I'm trying to think for myself. I want to be honest and objective and look at facts. When a bunch of people who are expert in an art and they know more than me say something, I think I'd be foolish to completely ignore them, okay? And I don't want to fall into an argument for authority. I don't want to slavishly follow them. On the other hand, I can't completely reject them. I'm presented with a theory of evolution which to me seems thankfully simple. The idea of mutation and adaptation to the environment is a very simple guiding.
But Tony, I think you're convoluting something here. That's one theory of evolution. That's the Darwinian theory of evolution.
I know, the Darwinian theory to me at least seems simple to understand and endorsed by a wide body of highly esteemed scientists. Therefore, I can't eliminate that possibility. What I'm left with is, if they're right, if I embrace that they may be correct, is that compatible with a God, an interventionist God, a theistic God, and it may be.
So I think we're converging on a point. Science, we're going to pray there. Yeah. Science has nothing to do with this, except as an input in an already in different metaphysical frameworks. So, if you start off with materialism, you import the science to come to a different conclusion. Then, if you start off with theism, you come to a different conclusion using the same science. So, science is not the adjudicator here. There is philosophy being done. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not saying that you're wrong. It depends on the question you're asking. If you're asking the question, did God create man? Then you're asking a question which has got a metaphysical dimension and a biological dimension, yes? But if you just ignore God for a minute and look at the process in the lab of how did these organic beings come to be the way they are, you don't have to engage God in the question at all. It can be a purely biological question. Yeah? Now these scientists, they're not trying to include God in the picture. They're trying to eliminate all of that, not because they necessarily believe or disbelieve in God, but because God is not a scientific issue, it's a metaphysical issue. Their job is to deal with the physics and the biology. In their attempts to do that, they've drawn certain conclusions which seem cogent, I think, and they seem cogent in the lab, and the idea that the conclusions they've drawn can then be 100% dismissed, which some people assert, seems premature. I think clearly as a layman I have to adjudicate there is grounds for doubt. Now doubt to me is not a problem.
Okay, so some things that you've said I don't disagree with, but there is one thing I disagree with if you meant this. The National Academy of Science, it represents 2,000 whatever scientists, but let's just say it represents 200,000 scientists or 2 billion scientists, whatever it is.
2,500, I think.
Okay, whatever it is. Okay. Let's just say they represent all scientists that ever existed.
Okay.
That entire monopoly, if they are, you know, you've given them the credibility in terms of the Nobel Prizes, all these things. They can still come up with an argument collectively as an academy which is false, and that is the argument that they came up with in the Dawah trial.
Okay, so it sounds like the authority that I'm quoting from has made invalid arguments in the past, and that should be on the record, if you're correct.
And the invalid argument is based upon?
I don't know.
Design.
Hang on. Just because they've made parallel invalid arguments doesn't mean that their core precept is invalid.
So I'll give you an example.
I'm happy to say they're not perfect. I don't think they're sacrosanct, but I do think if they were here, they would endorse Darwinian evolution.
They would.
As a point of fact, they would.
Yeah, but I didn't disagree with that.
I'd be stupid to ignore them.
Yeah, I didn't disagree with that.
And I believe your viewers as well would be unwise to completely ignore the input of people who are that expert in that field.
Okay,
yeah?
so
I'm not saying they're right or wrong.
So
I don't think you can
this is the academy that you're referring to, National Academy of Sciences.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, their definition of science that they used during the Dawah trial.
Yeah.
Okay. That definition of science that they actually used was a definition which precluded design, entailed naturalism. Yeah. And the problem is that intelligent design was challenged by this academy by definition, and that is something which doesn't make sense.
I agree with you that they made a mistake, because there will be a metaphysical dimension. If you accept Darwinian evolution as a biological mechanism, it raises the question, could that mechanism have been initiated by God? And the answer is potentially yes. If so, no problem anymore. We no longer have a conflict between science and faith, which to me is the ideal. Yeah?
Okay.
That's square.
I'm trying to understand if you got my conceptual point, which is that an entire academy can be wrong in the way that it puts forward a particular conclusion.
Yes, they're fallible as well. I'm not saying they're not fallible.
And I gave you the example of the fallibility, which, by the way, just to let you know, there's a guy called Martin Brody. I interviewed him about the Dawah trial, right? I interviewed him. He's an atheist. He's somebody who wouldn't agree with me on many different things. However, he put together a paper alongside two other academics in which he was basically arguing that intelligent design is basically, according to them, invalid, false, whatever. He believes it's false, but he thinks the way that it should be shown to be false is by making different arguments to the arguments that were made at the Dawah trial.
Right.
So he basically puts together 5 arguments that were used in the Dawah trial, and that those arguments are not valid because those were definitional, and he believes that there is a better way of showing intelligent design is false than the way that was employed.
He may well be right. Look, I don't expect the...
But I don't agree with him
Okay.
on everything, but I do agree with him that they were wrong in terms of the way that they used the Dawah trial. They used the definitional way of getting rid of intelligent design in the Dawah trial.
Fair enough.
And that is, by the way, that's a big mark against them.
Okay.
Even I would say...
Hang on, the mark against them is that they may have used spurious arguments to reject a metaphysical position that actually is beyond their jurisdiction. Yeah?
Not a metaphysical position, a philosophical position,
philosophical and metaphysical position beyond
because even the judge at the trial, he had no training in the philosophy of science, yet he's calling things pseudoscience.
I get it. So look,
yeah, I mean, okay,
if they fall short within the arena of metaphysics, they may well do.
But can I ask you?
That doesn't mean they're falling short within the arena of biology and physics, does it?
No, I agree with you. I agree with you there. I actually agree with you. But I just want to end upon one small question.
Well, hang on, please let us do Adamic exceptionalism a bit, because you guys have discussed it as well.
Sure.
And I think it's really constructive for your viewers to know it's on the menu.
Sure.
Yeah? Because no scientist could disprove Adamic exceptionalism ever. I believe if I took the 190 Nobel Prize winners currently in the National Academy of Science and said to them, can you disprove, is there anything Adamic exceptionalism which runs contrary to your beliefs about science, they would have to go no.
Yeah.
Okay?
Do you have to do that one, or can you do something more interesting?
No, this is great. The idea that you can bring together the two communities, the religious community and the mainstream scientific community, on a point where there will no longer be conflict, is potential progress.
Okay, so with Adamic, okay.
Well, yeah, I consider that progress. I consider discord to be less progress than synthesis.
So I wanna go over 2 ways Adamic exceptionalism can be done.
Okay.
And I think it's important to make the distinction. One distinction, and you're right, scientists can't disprove it. It's in line, like.
Whereas if I raise Darwinian evolution, they will go, this is definitely the case. It's not creationism. But if I go Adamic exceptionalism, they'll go, fair enough. We can't argue.
But I do want to add something. If Darwinism,
actually, can we quickly explain what Adamic exceptionalism is?
Sure.
Adamic exceptionalism is the idea that, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that the Darwinian evolution, the standard model which is proposed by people, even like Richard Dawkins, is basically correct. That is how it works. But simultaneously, Adam and Eve were miraculously created by an interventionist God in the Garden of Eden, metaphorically.
in under the radar way.
Under the radar, yeah. That Adam and Eve were miraculously created. They had kids who then interbred with the Darwinian kids, which means we are now all the result of both Adam and Eve's genealogy and Darwinian evolution, yeah. Now, I don't happen to believe that's true.
But by the way,
however, I do recognise that as a concept, it's bulletproof to me being able to disprove it.
Okay.
And no scientist could disprove it.
Sure. But just to add, that's one version of Adamic exceptionalism.
Okay.
That there was interbreeding. Yeah, you described it correctly.
Thank you.
There was interbreeding between Adam's children and Neanderthals.
Yeah.
That's one version.
So we're now all children of both God and Darwinian evolution. Yeah?
Well, we don't believe in children of God, but I'll
mean it
explain.
poetically.
Yeah.
You do believe in speciation.
Okay. However, there's another version of Adamic exceptionalism I was thinking about, which is
Sorry, I will get you in.
that those Neanderthals or other Denisovans or whatever it was, all of them go back much further to a common ancestor who was Adam. Nice. That's another version.
Hang on, you're talking about an Adam who doesn't just go back 7,000 years or something.
No, I mean,
This sounds like a metaphorical Adam, not a literal.
No, it's not metaphorical. It could go back 200,000-300,000 years. before the Neanderthals,
Okay,
before the
but did
Denisovans.
that Adam arise as a result of an interventionist God clicking his fingers?
Yeah.
But wasn't there...
Actually, sorry. When it comes to the creation of Adam, we do not say we know the mechanism. So, for example, when you say, I as a Muslim, I have to be clear that God created Adam without predecessors. However, I can't say in this way or that way all the time. I can't say anything.
We agree.
All the time frame.
It's a miracle. As soon as it happened, then it's a miracle. But it's in no way incompatible with the Darwinian thing. Adamic exceptionism does synthesize the two.
I just thought of something. Let me guess your intention behind this. You're basically saying to me that Shuaib's view is harmonizing, and I'm still challenging Darwinism. Why am I doing it? That's your question, isn't it? Okay, sure.
I like harmonization.
Yeah.
You're a nice guy. You like harmonization.
Sure.
And there's too much conflict in the world.
Sure.
So let's just explore.
So
let's exploring an idea.
Sure.
Embrace it. You can
Sure. But let me explain something. Like, Shuaib is a very good friend of mine. We've known each other for years, but we actually disagree on certain aspects of evolution, right? No, actually, not disagree on certain aspects of evolution. We disagree on approaches. So, I believe intelligent design is science. He believes it's not science. That's a fundamental difference.
You believe intelligent design
Is science, and he believes it's pseudo. He believes it's not science.
I'm with him. It's not.
Okay,
You're
I believe it's science.
As everything you said before, you're drawing on metaphysical assumptions.
Yeah. Okay. So
Therefore, it's not physics.
But let me. Yeah, it is metaphysics. But let me point out some other things.
If it's metaphysics, it's not physics.
No, some things are on a gradient, but I'll explain that in a second. The other thing is, he believes. So I believe in challenging Darwinism. He doesn't believe. He believes conceptually. His book is about if Darwinism's true, what can we accept, what can we reject. So our approaches are totally different. And we actually had a podcast on this. You can see the podcast. It's quite interesting, right? Long story short, despite what you've said, I still believe it's important to challenge Darwinism.
Okay, I hear it. As a layman, what am I supposed to do? You spent your life reading a whole load of stuff I'm not going to have access to. You've read loads of facts. You've drawn a conclusion from those facts. A bunch of other people who you seem to hold in some regard because they quote other scientific ideas you embrace. They've looked at the same facts and drawn different conclusions.
But they don't believe in intelligent.
Sticking in the middle.
Sure. But they don't believe in intelligent design. I want to make that clear. Dennis Noble, James Shapiro, they reject intelligent design. They reject. I mean, they accept common answers.
Would they accept intelligent design if I said to them that God used evolution, Darwinian evolution, as a mechanism for it?
They do not accept any of this. They are naturalists.
Yeah.
They believe in the naturalistic program.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But they're metaphysical. The minute they reject the idea of God, they're making a metaphysical statement.
So let me explain. I'll summarize it. Yeah, sure. So before I go out,
Define what you mean by metaphysics for a minute. I had a discussion with someone before because different people mean different things by it, and I mean something quite unusual actually. So I use it in an unconventional sense anyway. What do you mean by metaphysics?
I believe, firstly, there is no clear distinction between physics and metaphysics. I believe there's a gradient, right? There's a gradient. Questions of a nature of ontology, a nature of epistemology, they are definitely philosophical questions. Questions of a purely they're metaphysical questions, but questions of a purely observational perspective are purely scientific.
Yeah, natural science.
Yeah.
So we have natural science which studies objects and energy, things with matter,
space-time,
and energy. And we have metaphysics which studies things.
Ontology, theory of knowledge. However, I believe there's a gradient. It's not clear-cut at certain points.
Oh, I've got a clear-cut line.
For example, the beginning of the universe is physics and philosophy. It's both.
That's a very wide assertion. Can I give a counter where it's simple? I think there is a very clear-cut line. If you have matter or energy, in other words, if you're made of stuff, I'll call it stuff, because matter and energy are the same stuff, E equals mc squared. If you have matter or energy, you're an object. If you exist ontologically but you don't have matter or energy, you're metaphysical. I.e. qualia would be a good example. example. Yeah, qualia would seem to have no matter or energy.
Okay.
So it's real, but it's a metaphysical.
No, so I'm going to have to disagree with you there.
Okay, go on.
Qualia is probably the worst example to use.
It's the best example to use.
Okay, so whether someone looks at qualia, okay, are brain states equal to mental states from your perspective?
There seem to be correlations.
Okay. That correlation is not sufficient to rule out anything non-material. Correlation of neurons, a correlation of brain states to mental states doesn't justify physicalism.
I'm not trying to justify physicalism.
No.
Qualia transcends physicalism, hence it's metaphysical.
Oh, you believe it transcends? Okay.
It seems to be where else can I categorize
Okay,
it?
sorry.
Qualia is my hobby horse and it went too far.
Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood you. I thought you said qualia. I thought you said brain states equal mental states. I misunderstood you. Okay, fine. So you're the same boat as me.
Let's backtrack into metaphysics.
By the way, just to let you know, you know the main guy behind consciousness for the past a couple of years. What's his name?
What? The guy who died?
No, not the guy who died. Robert Lawrence Kuhn.
Oh yeah. Actually, I don't know much about him. I know the name. I've seen him on a couple of things.
So he's the guy who's written a paper called "The Landscape of Consciousness." Right. This paper was published this year, and it's 175,000 words. So it's all of the views of consciousness, right? And he's not a materialist, right?
Yeah.
So we're in convergence from the perspective that qualia is a good example of something. However,
intangible, physically intangible, but irrefutably real.
Yes. However, it's also an example that there's a gradient between the physical and the metaphysical. Qualia's in the middle.
Right. I think you're using the word gradient in a way I don't understand. I would say it's a clear line. If it's physical and I can measure it, then it's not metaphysical, it's physics. If it's not measurable but real, it must be in another dimension, which is therefore a metaphysical dimension. Now, my experience of qualia, it clearly doesn't contain matter or energy, so it's not within the domain of physics, but you can't pretend it's not real because irrefutably I feel stuff, Therefore, there is a dimension to reality, ontological reality, which transcends physics. That seems to be logically irrefutable, and that's the platform from which most religions, I would argue all religions are right.
Sure. It seems to be.
We're on the same page.
Yeah, we are. But I want your view on this. So I hosted a discussion between Michael Roos and Stephen Law on consciousness, and one of the views that was discussed was illusionism. That consciousness is an illusion, and qualia is simply a physical phenomenon.
That's a meaningless assertion.
Okay. Good. I agree with you.
In fact, Sharon Lanny has said that. He said consciousness is the one thing which calling it an illusion doesn't in any way undermine it, because it's not consciousness. It's not what it diagnoses. It's that it exists at all. So it doesn't matter if it's an illusion. It's still inevitably so. To call it an illusion is meaningless. If I say that bush is an illusion, I could then touch it and discover and pull through it and change something. But my consciousness inevitably is what it is. So you can call it an illusion, you're just tarnishing it. It doesn't mean anything. It's real, irrefutably real. The word illusion means nothing in that context. So you can't dismiss consciousness.
Yeah. So
we agree.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I just wanted your perspective on this because I think consciousness is the mother of the problem, the mother of the issue when it comes to naturalism. I think it's the one thing that naturalists find most hard to explain.
Agreed. The mystery of consciousness is an ongoing enigma. I suspect it will be forever. My thesis is that it's the one which religion has consistently consistently been addressing the dilemma of being a conscious entity.
Which, by the way, Michael Roos, when I asked him earlier on this year, he said it will never be solved by science.
Can we move that way a little bit?
Sure.
So we're not getting into that, yeah.
He said it.
But I don't think it will either.
Yeah.
It can't be dealt by physics, yeah? But it can't be refuted ontologically.
Yeah.
And trying to square the circle will be the eternal quest of human beings, yeah? But we need to do it as cogently as possible in a way which does service to both dimensions of reality, the intangible and the tangible. Backtracking into evolution, currently there seems to be a bit of a mismatch between those two views. I think anything which helps to harmonise them is more constructive, which is why I promote Adamic exceptionalism just as a thought experiment, even though I don't believe it.
So this is the only, I guess the only point where we disagree is I believe it's still very important to challenge Darwinism head on. One of the metaphysical abuse that the Darwinists have done. Two, because of the ethical implications of Darwinism.
Oh, okay, now we're getting deep. Okay, the ethical implications.
But the metaphysical is more important than ethical.
To me, the ethical is more important.
Because they're linked.
Okay,
Once you challenge the metaphysical, you challenge the ethical.
Can we focus on the ethical?
Sure.
Because ethics is something I like. Ethics and qualia is kind of where I'm at. Okay. Prima facie, Darwin's theory of evolution seems ethically abhorrent.
Ethically?
Abhorrent.
Okay.
To me, yeah, it paints a very dark picture of the human.
Nature's red in tooth and claw.
It would seem nature raw in tooth and claw. Look after number one. Don't worry about anybody else. It's the antithesis of what most good religions, including stuff in the Quran, teaches. Yeah. So you can see where on the surface there'd be at loggerheads. But I don't think you should give up on it at that point. If you dig a little bit deeper, maybe it's possible to synthesize them. More work should be put into trying to do it. Dawkins himself, in his documentary series he did, in his second episode, and this was about 20 years ago, I think, I remember him watching it, he went, seeing I'm making such a clear-cut argument for tooth and claw evolution, how is it the species hasn't wiped itself out? How is it that somehow we seem to be progressing? Yeah? Broadly, we're becoming a little bit more ethical, a little bit more humanized and so on. And he acknowledged that somewhere in the mix there must be a counterbalancing positive force, because his basic premise is so bleak, we shouldn't be doing as well as we're doing. So he acknowledged, in a sense, he's missing something. One theory he had was that evolution would originally be that you favoured your own gene pool, yeah? So you favoured your family and your nephews and your nieces, whatever, over other gene pools. But that a mutate which gave you empathy for your particular peer group. But at some point, a random or divinely inspired mutation occurred where that instinct to empathise with your peer group happened to extend then to the wider community of human beings themselves. And when that happened, that was the evolutionary leap into us being fully functional ethical beings. Yeah. So even within his own mechanism, he could see how we could evolve through mutation to be the ethical paradigm that your religion embraces, and I would advocate. Yeah. So why can't we should give some ground to that instead of just attacking it?
Sure.
Because it might be a way of synthesizing the two worldviews.
Sure. What I would say to that is that the idea that Darwinism can be synthesized with our humanity goes back a few decades to W.D. Hamilton. And W.D. Hamilton, and then afterwards Dawkins popularized it. They had the theory of kin selection to explain our humanity. And then afterwards reciprocal altruism was another theory. And then, like you pointed out, the expanding circle. Okay?
Sorry, do you want to bring Jamie in?
No, you pointed out Peter Singer's expanding circle. I've spent years studying the ethical arguments they've come up with, and I disagree with all three of them. So kin selection, reciprocal altruism, and the expanding circle, I think are flawed theories.
What do you mean by reciprocal altruism? Because to me it sounds like empathy and it sounds good.
So reciprocal altruism is
you scratch that guy's scratch.
for adaptive benefits. Okay?
Yeah.
So I disagree with them heavily. If you wait for me a few minutes, I'm just going to pray and then you carry on.
No, of course.
I'm just going to pray and then...
I'll pray with you.
No. Can you? I'll keep it. Shall I keep it on? Ah, okay. Thank you.
Can I follow your lead?
Yeah, that's fine. Allahu Akbar. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
So they give out everything. World War I and World War II. Also, Americans got a lot of immigration from Europe. Got a lot of the wealthy soldiers, money, jewelry.
Allahu Akbar.
The Americans borrowed money and borrowed the weapons in Europe.
Allahu Akbar.
Borrowed money, borrowed Europe.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
America become the rich and the strong. America has nothing to matter with Europe.
Allahu Akbar.
All the connection with other countries. Become also like
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Yes, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, become rich. After 5 years, you fall.
Allahu Akbar.
That's American isolation. American isolation will result in collapse of collapse of the world, collapse of the currency.
Allahu Akbar. سمي الله لمن حمده. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. What's your name?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm from the States and I'm Uyghur myself, so Allah Mubarak for
Oh, Uyghur, okay. Thank you very much.
The voice that you know, like speak upon our people and everything.
Thank you. Yeah, no, wait, finishing. What's your name?
Muhammad.
Muhammad. Let's speak after this, inshallah. He's a Uyghur.
He's a
Uyghur.
okay.
From China, because I do Uyghur activism.
Oh,
so.
they've been oppressed, yeah?
Yeah. So going back to kin selection, what was it? Kin
Selection. You were talking about reciprocal altruism. Three interpretations of the theory you don't like, one of which was reciprocal altruism.
Oh yeah, who's with us? Where's he gone?
Jamie was... He's over there. Yeah. He's over there.
Okay. Yeah. So
Can I nail it down to empathy? I think the key is empathy, yeah? Something made us empathic. I think the essence of ethical goodness is empathy, which is when you're sensitized to what's going on inside another subject apart from yourself, yeah? It's not something all animals
animals have, but we seem to have jumped the shark on it in a very positive way. Yeah? Dawkins seemed to be pointing out how through a scientific lens, a biological lens, that could have happened through mutation. Religion seems to show on a narrative level how it could have happened.
Okay.
I'm interested in how much you can synthesize this.
So before we synthesize, I want to point out what are the three things which Dawkins, Singer and others are pointing towards, and why I disagree with them. They're basically trying to explain our moral sense from a Darwinian perspective.
Yeah.
And the crux of the argument is we are moral for the benefit of our genes. So the way it begins,
unless God intervened to manipulate the genes to behave that way.
Yeah, but obviously he doesn't believe in God. Dawkins,
He doesn't, but I'm not him. I'm pushing the notion.
Sure.
He may have missed it, but I'm on board.
Sure, but
maybe God manipulated the genes to do it, and then we don't have a problem.
But the naturalistic explanation that Dawkins points out, kin selection is the idea you're good to your kin because they carry your genes.
Which makes sense.
Reciprocal altruism, it does. But
you scratch my back, I scratch yours.
Yeah, no, that's reciprocal altruism. The expanding circle is it just goes wider and wider from the family to the town to the city to the village.
Which is a positive trajectory.
Right. However, many philosophers and even scientists have pointed out these theories are flawed because there's recalcitrant facts against them. We, for example, and we're not talking about God here, we're talking about the naturalistic understanding. We're good to people that will never benefit us and are not related to us. Now, David Stove wrote a book called...
I just covered that with what he said. The point was, if the ability to empathize just went rogue, it went off-piece, and suddenly I'm empathizing with everybody, even if they're not in my gene pool, that's actually an ethical upgrade.
So,
it's thrown free of its origin.
So I just want to point out, because you're a smart guy, you're going to look this up yourself as well. Philosophers have pointed holes in these arguments. These arguments where empathy and altruism has become a runaway process of itself.
I don't doubt they have. It doesn't mean they're right.
I want to show you. I want to summarize what their arguments are, why they disagree.
Okay.
Obviously, some agree, some disagree. The best arguments have been put forward by David Stove in his book Darwinian Fairy Tales. What he does is he tackles kin selection and reciprocal altruism, because the expanding circle of altruism being a runaway process, it breaks down if kin selection fails, because it starts with kin selection. Reciprocal altruism builds on it, and expanding circle builds on it. So it's like a Russian doll going back, So kin selection as a theory totally fails because the predictions of inclusive fitness theory that W.D. Hamilton put forward, they have been shown to have recalcitrant facts. For example, we don't sacrifice ourselves for even people who are related to us, and in some cases we sacrifice ourselves for people who are not related to us.
Yeah, which is a good thing.
No, it is a good thing. But what I'm pointing out to you is the naturalistic Darwinian story doesn't account for morality in that way.
But the narrative I just gave, the interpretation I just gave you,
your interpretation does.
I'm paraphrasing him, but even if he didn't, I'll give it, okay? Let's just assume it's my idea for a minute. Random mutation takes a raw ability to empathize due to self-interest, and it goes rogue, and suddenly empathy is born universally.
Yeah,
that would be a breakthrough moment, and it's credible and compatible with Darwinian evolution, and it doesn't disprove the creationist model.
It's a fantastic idea, but it's false. That's the problem.
I like that. I've never heard. You don't hear that phrase often. It's a fantastic idea and it's false.
Okay.
It's impossible.
No,
really?
It doesn't take off. Okay. Now Dawkins himself, in a debate with John Lennox. You know John Lennox.
You'd be amazed how little I know about all of this.
So John Lennox, he's a mathematician from Oxford University. He's a Christian. They had a debate. During the debate, John Lennox showed how the ethical arguments that he was making are flawed.